Astro friends. This is Astrology AF, the show that talks everything astrology, above and below the totally real, not at all illusory sky. I'm Sunny, your hostess with over 30 years of chart reading experience.
And I'm Boots, your hostling with almost 30 years experience questioning innocent people to tears. We're here to walk with you through the twinkling starlight into the basic, the advanced, and the obscure.
Today's topic that we had discussed previously was going to be ethics, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are some of the areas you are thinking of going with?
Ethically, looking at someone's chart without their permission is a no. Forecasting for a child is something I won't do. Some astrologers will, but even they have like limitations, talking about or displaying someone's chart without their permission is a no. Even with permission, there's a whole set of things that are no-nos. Okay, for example, if I have a client and I'm working with them and I say, this thing about your chart is very interesting and I want to study this some more. I study that and work with that and find more information. If they give me permission to share their chart, they are not giving me permission to share their identity. So I say, okay, so I have this. As a matter of fact, this is something that's come up recently. There's somebody that I've done a chart with that has an amazing Venus retrograde story and whole setup, and I can't talk about it because I don't yet have their permission to share. But when they give permission, I'm planning on asking for that because we're going to be working together. That doesn't mean that I can say who they are or where they live. I mean, casting a chart, you have to use the birthplace. If you don't have a birthplace, if you obscure the birthplace, you change the chart. So you need to keep the birthplace original, but you definitely don't need to keep their name attached to it. It should not be attached. In telling the biographical details or the biographical, this is what happened in the life of this person, you have to obscure as much as you can. You can obscure the gender just simply by saying they. And that way it's like, well, is that a guy? Is that a woman? Is that a they? I don't know. You talk about their biographical, the things that happened in a very obscure kind of way. Take out details that would identify in any way.
Right.
So it's a whole thing, because you can look at a chart and foresee all kinds of events, and to then be able to attach that back and say, oh, I know who that is because the astrologer wasn't careful with their identity. And so now I can go create mayhem or take that chart and use it for my own ends. And like, oh, I'm predicting a divorce that this person is going to have. Well, maybe that person is not even thinking about divorce in their. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because there's also there's a very real possibility of just planting ideas in people's minds you know, and if you hear it from an astrologer and this is something that you believe in, you know, it kind of ties right into the trope or the stereotype of why some people poo-poo astrology in the first place is they say like, oh, you know, you or that somebody's gonna break up with somebody else because their astrologer said, you know, the sun is in asparagus, and so you're gonna break up with X and X. And that's you know, if people take you seriously, then that just thoughts are a powerful thing. And maybe it wasn't in the chart at all. But now that they've heard it from you and they believe that and they think it has something to do with their fate, then they're going to go off and act a fool when, you know, they didn't have to in the first place.
Right, right.
There's also, I don't know too much about this. I'm not sure if you do, but I have heard that in some traditions, particularly the Chinese tradition, it's a thing not to share your chart with people,
Mhm,
and that an astrologer keeps your chart well guarded because it can reveal your weaknesses,
mhm,
and
mhm.
it could make you potentially vulnerable to an attack from an unsavory party. People could potentially take advantage of you knowing that, you know, like, oh, their moon is in Taurus, they're soft and squishy, and they're going to be manipulable via X and X means. You know, this is the kind of stuff that they're going to care about. So this is the kind of stuff that I can weasel my way in and do this kind of stuff with. Me and a friend of mine were recently talking with another friend who he's not I guess he was into astrology previously, but uh we were looking at charts of various people that had been involved in our lives, and I was kind of sitting there wondering, you know, like, where are we on the kind of spectrum of ethicality with this, especially if if you're not doing with anything with it, that's one thing. But if you're looking at it and say perhaps you you have information and you pull up a chart of somebody who you're trying to get with, who you're trying to make it with, and you see, oh, they might be going through a time right now where they're vulnerable, and you choose to take advantage of that.
Absolutely, right.
That would be unethical, right?
Which
You
is
know,
which is why, because it's like it doesn't matter what the reason is. This is why it's like it is unethical to look at someone's chart without their permission. Period.
all
Now,
right, well, not on me. I'm sorry.
I mean, you know, you didn't mean any harm and you didn't do any harm, but it's just kind of it's like looking in their underwear drawer, you know? Or I
Yeah,
mean, even if you don't do anything with it, that's knowledge that is not yours. That's it's not, you know, that they haven't granted you,
yeah,
you know. I
yeah.
mean,
So that's
and
understand.
yeah, and the, you know, the way that you can get around this is by saying to, and you know, saying to the person, is it all right if I look at your chart? Is
Yeah,
that okay? And you know, they may say, well, why do you want to? You know, and you can have a conversation about that, you know. Um,
I'm sorry. My screen is shaking a little bit. My cat has decided to burrow underneath the table that my computer is sitting on, and
and you know, to go further with that, because um, if you're talking about someone whose chart exists and they don't know what you can do with it, or they don't know, you know, why that's a vulnerable place. Okay. Maybe going farther and saying, you know, all I want to do is I want to, you know, I'm trying to find out blah 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 blah, you know. um that really puts you in the clear, you know.
Okay.
Just saying, well, you know, can I look at your chart? And then they say yes, and then you go and try to find out, you know, when they're likely to lose money in the stock market or something, and so you can, you know, go after that, chase that vulnerability. You know, you are still in unethical territory, even though they have said, yes, you can look at my chart.
Okay, right. Because you can lie to them. Lying is always an option that you must choose not to go with.
Right, right. And, you know, and if somebody, I mean, it's like, if somebody doesn't know what knowledge a birth chart has, what it contains, then their permission is limited. That makes sense. If we talk about, well, you know, a birth chart talks about, you know, and I can look at your birth chart and I can figure out like when you're likely to have relationship troubles or money troubles or troubles at work. Okay. And you're granting me permission to look at all of those things. They might not give you permission.
Yeah.
Because if they actually knew what was entailed, you know. Now, and that is, you know, that's one of the things when I talk to people that either I already have looked at their chart, or they've I'm sending them their chart after we've done a reading. I'm very careful to say thank you for entrusting me with this, because this is a big thing, even if they don't know it.
There's so, well, I guess maybe we shouldn't get into details about what other kind of dirty information can you get on somebody through their chart, because that's not what it's not what the episode is about. Let the
No.
evil minds do their own machinations. But there's what other kinds of things? So would you, if you see in a chart, like what would be an unethical thing to say in a reading if you see it? Like, you know, there's stuff where if you're doing a reading for somebody, even though they didn't specifically ask a question, you might be like, oh, and you know, by the way, you should maybe do some extra leg stretches because your knees are vulnerable, right? Nobody's really going to get upset with you about that.
Right,
But
right.
what are some things that if you find it, do you just not bring up?
Okay, good question. Death. Not that I have ever really seen, I haven't ever seen anything that's like, you know, completely, oh my God, there's no way that could be interpreted as anything else, you know. But I won't go there either way.
Okay, even if you're asked to?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct. I won't. First of all, it's oftentimes to find someone's, I assume we're talking about someone who's asking about someone else's death. If you're asking about your own, that's in, you know, in your chart. But if you're looking at someone else's death, that's someone else's chart. Back to rule 1, we don't have permission to look at that chart.
Yeah.
You know, and especially not for their death, for Pete's sake. You know, I'm sure nobody is going to grant permission, knowing if, you know, if that was the question.
Yeah.
Do that. There are so many different interpretations of astrological phenomena. There are hundreds, maybe not hundreds, but there are a lot. Okay. You know, we all, for example, we all are experiencing the same moon sign right now, every one of us. And that pertains to our chart in certain ways, but there's billions of people and we all have the same moon happening, right? Or we all have the same, let's take something that moves slower. We all have the same Uranus, okay? Uranus in Taurus, okay?
Right.
It looks different in your chart and my chart and this person's and this person's and this. And even if when I look at that, it's like, it still could, it can manifest in a bunch of different ways, okay? The classic line that I say to my clients all the time is, you know, I may look at your chart and I may see that it looks like you're going to get hit by a bus. Okay. But here's the thing. Is it that you're actually physically going to get run over by a bus? Or is it that you're going to feel like you got hit by a bus? Two very different outcomes, right?
Yeah.
One involves like emergency rooms and things. But it's the same energy. Okay. So I don't predict dire outcomes. I just don't.
Yeah.
I talk about, okay, there's this energy. You want to be careful around this. You might want to, you know, maybe avoid crossing the street for a little while. I might say something like that, you know, or just be very cautious around this because, you know, there's some energy here that's like, this can be rough for you. Okay. Much different than there's an evil, malignant influence in your life and you're being haunted by that.
Yeah.
I just won't do it. I just won't do it. It's a lot of it. It seems it's trying to create a dependency on that astrologer or that reader. And this is true for any kind of reading, I think. You know, because if they saw a terrible thing in my future, then I need to come back and find out what I need to do. Or is it gone yet? You know, and so on and so forth. I just don't do it. I won't do it.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a really interesting note to touch on is an astrologer creating a dependence on themselves. So what kind of things can lead towards creating a dependence on you? Or rather, what do you avoid in order to not bring that about?
What do I avoid? I avoid language that takes the choice point away from my client. There are certainly things that as we encounter, you know, as we go through life, there are certainly things that happen that we don't have choice in. Okay. But when there's stuff like that, I do believe that there's always some kind of choice. Okay. And so I talk to my clients about energy. And I talk to them about, you know, there's this heavy energy, for example, you know, something, and I tell them why. I talk to them about, okay, so Pluto is here, and Pluto is about secrets and power, and I can't think of any other words right now, but you know, so I talk to them about the energy of Pluto and how that can look like, you know, this in a person or that in a person, or it could just be an event, but it's this energy that you're dealing with. And so, you know, what I suggest you do is be cautious, take care, so on and so forth. I don't think I'm exactly a Pollyanna, because I do talk a lot about, the struggle and the issues that are happening. But after I get done talking about the struggles, then I'm talking about, well, what do we do now? How do we deal with that? Where do we go with that? Instead of you're just a victim of this heavy energy, and sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, on the one, that leaves somebody feeling bad, but then also, as considering doing readings as a business, that's just not good business. You don't want to leave somebody feeling hopeless. That's not gonna, bolster their faith in you as an astrologer or in astrology in general.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even really considered what it takes to like make my clients be dependent on me. I'm sure that hopelessness is a stage. It's a part of it.
Yeah,
I'm hopeless, and then as a client is thinking, this is hopeless. And so this person, this astrologer, is going to be able to tell me what to do. I don't know. I just don't play that game.
right.
I just don't play that. I'm very much about empowering people to make choices that that work for them. And I do have some clients that come back to me on a regular basis. Some of them come back just for an annual checkup kind of thing. They
Yeah,
do a solar return chart, and which changes, of course, every year. And we play around with that. Some other clients of mine they come back and they're looking for timing. I have a thing coming up, and I want to know when is a good time to, what's a good astrological signature for this. So we do fine, but no, it's you got to be really careful. You got to realize that you're dealing with people's lives, and because it's something, it's a system that they don't understand, right? It's a language, a system, this chart thing. Most people don't know what it is, and so they either have to believe whatever you tell them, or else they don't, in which case why they're not even there. Okay, so everybody who's there is there because they believe that you can tell them something about their own lives.
right. Something you can't figure out on their own necessarily.
Yeah. And so, that's a huge responsibility. And it's super important to just remember, I'm dealing with, this is not just a chart. This is not just symbols on a piece of paper. This is a person, with hopes and fears and dreams. And, you just have to be really, really cognizant of that.
Right. What have you ever done a reading where you had to like maybe their specific inquiry was about scary things, like if somebody is saying, when am I gonna die, or what is going to be the most difficult part of my life and how can I prepare for it and stuff, where it's they're inviting you into the scary stuff that they want your help with. How do you kind of tread into those waters um, while maintaining ethical ground.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so I'm thinking of one client in particular who's, I do not have the permission to share it all at all. Okay.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
But it was a frightening situation that they were, that they were dealing with or afraid of. And in that case, what I do and what I did and what I do is I am looking for support for this person. I
okay,
am looking for, I'm not trying to like blow sunshine, but I figure they've come to me, they are already upset enough. And the last thing that these people, that this client needs is for me to say, oh yes, this is a terrible situation and this is going to go on for 6 months and oh God, you know, um, I don't even look for that kind of thing. If I can see something is like where it's gonna, it's gonna change immediately, we'll talk about that. But if it's not, if it's a month of 6 months, whatever, I I don't I don't do that because it's that if you are at your extreme, and then someone says, well, in 3 months it'll get better. 3 months is a long freaking time when you're hopeless and helpless and all of that. So no, I don't do that. I talk about what's here, what's coming, what I'm seeing showing up, you know?
yeah, just trying to provide positivity to what is explicitly an unfortunate situation.
Right, right, right. And
Yeah,
to some extent, I'm like, in some ways, I feel badly that's I mean, I feel badly about the whole situation. It's a horrible situation. Um, and I want to be able to bolster people up when they're dealing with, crisis.
yeah,
Okay. And so that's just how I choose to do it.
okay,
It's not that somebody else is wrong. I'm just feeling like if I put myself on the other side of the table a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And if I'm feeling the way that this person has expressed that they're feeling, and then the astrologer says, 3 months, 6 months, I that is not a good feeling to me. I don't feel like that's something that's helpful, you know.
yeah. But it then, like obviously, if they specifically ask, how long is this going to last? Because they want to know. For me, sometimes, if I'm dealing with something, I want to, and you can see, I come to you and I ask you, how long is my cat gonna have to wear booties because she burned her paws going outside when it was too hot? Um, then I want an answer about time frame
Mm-hmm,
specific.
mm-hmm.
And I know that with human beings and with the psychology of our behavior, we want to know how long something is going to last. We want to know where the end of this road is, because otherwise, I would rather hear it's going to be a year than think that maybe it'll just go on indefinitely
Yeah,
for some
yeah,
negative situation that I'm in. So if somebody asks, then you would be more likely to say, like, okay, yeah, I can see here it suggests that it's only going to be another 4 months that you're dealing with this. or you have to break the harsh news of saying, no, it looks like this could last the rest of your life. That's something that you don't want to have to tell somebody. But if they asked, are you going to give them the honest answer about what they inquired?
Yes, I no, I'm not going to lie to anybody. If it's so a situation like your um example, that would be something that I wouldn't have any trouble at all answering, regardless, because I wouldn't feel like you are, at your wit's end, you know. Um, so, I would totally go, yeah, it's probably going to be, 8 months, looks like, for the kitty, and, get him some cute shoes. But when it comes to dire, devastating kind of situations like I was referencing before, and of course I can't say what it was, I gauge that, I judge that, and I would rather, I'm not going to lie. If somebody says, I want to know how long this is going to last, I would tell them. I would temper it so hard it wouldn't be funny, because I would still be, talking about, support and, help and things like that.
Right.
But no, I won't lie about it, but I won't lead with it if it's looking like a long time.
Okay. Yeah. Then though, if it's something that normally you would try and avoid the conversation about how long it's going to be, but then they're asking, they're talking about, like, I've got, say somebody brings up like romantic relationship problems that they're having,
Mhm.
and they're saying, I want to gain a little bit of insight into what the heck is going on with my partner and my significant other, and I want to know if this is something that, how to work through it. And also, we're getting married in 6 months, but then you as the astrologer look at their chart, and there ain't no end in sight for the issues that you're dealing with. Um, and you are getting the impression off of the chart that, like, this is not something you should follow through with.
Mhm.
But that's not their question.
Right.
To bring it up,
Do I bring up should they get married? Should they
they,
actually get
they didn't
married?
ask. They're
They
telling
didn't.
you that the
Yeah.
plan is to get married, but they want to know how to work through the issues they're having now.
Mhm.
And you look and you see there is no way out of the issues you are having now. Um, and your impression is that this is not going to be a good, long-lasting relation. Even if it lasts long, it's not going to be good. Tell them that if that's not their question, because, on the one hand, you are aware of the fact that you might be saving them some trouble, but on the other hand, they might just not want to hear it. you know what's ethical, to let them go on in their delusion or to give them the hard truth?
Yeah, so ethicality isn't about it, it's if you see a train coming for a car on the tracks, ethicality says you get people out of that car, you
Yeah.
know, as much to the end, to the level that you can.
Right.
I often feel like I'm I am a grandmother, and when I'm in a situation like that, I kind of fall back on grandma energy, and I will say to them something along the lines of, this looks like this is energy, this situation that you're describing looks like it's gonna go on for quite some time. And are you 100% sure that you want to enter into a, you know, a commitment with this person?
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. So just try and bring up, not necessarily, you're not going to tell them like, don't do it, but you're going to be like, are you
right,
really sure this is actually what's going to be best for you?
right, right.
Kind of leave it at that. And you don't tell them like, oh no, you've got these aspects happening between the two of you. And with the transits of like the day that you're planning to get married, it's just a mess. This is a disaster. Get out of there.
I mean, okay, so I'd probably do talk about the transits and the astrology much more than maybe some other astrologers. I know some other astrologers who just kind of look at the chart and then they'll just start talking about your life, your personality. I'm always bouncing back and forth. I'm like, okay, so you have the moon here in the seventh house, and so that means that you're, you know, that relationships are really important to you, and blah 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 blah. And you know, transits we have right now, we've got Neptune coming into the seventh house, and so you know, it's this situation where it's like, I'm not sure, I don't know what's real, I'm not very clear about this, you know. And so
Yeah.
I kind of fold it all in, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't I I don't believe, you know, obviously this is your own life, and you are the architect of your own life. And you know, all I can do is say what I see, you
Right.
know, and I do that. I don't think it's unethical to question a relationship in terms of, you know, is this, are you certain this is what you want? Because it looks like it's kind of messy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And then if you're able to pull out some details, like it seems like there's some issues with like maybe communication and priorities. And then they go, oh yeah, that's totally like the root of our issue and stuff. Then you can be like, well, it looks like that's, you know, like that might be a prevailing theme throughout the entirety of the relationship. Because like you were saying, you know, if somebody's about to drive off a cliff and you get a chance to talk to them beforehand, you're going to say like, hey, you should probably stop the car.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it would be unethical not to tell them that.
yeah.
If they're speeding towards a cliff and they can't see where they're going, they don't realize where things are headed, but you can see it clearly.
Mhm.
It would be, you know, in that situation, it might be unethical not to give them a warning about what is happening. And because we can all get really caught up in, you know, love makes you do stupid things sometimes.
Mhm.
Uh, and you don't, you've got your blinders on and rosy colored glasses. So, like, sure, there's red flags. All the flags are red. What's the issue?
Well, and see, here's the thing. It's like, um, you know, by putting it in terms of, are you sure you want to? Um, I, 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 I think you might want to look at this again. You know, that kind of language. It keeps the power where it belongs, which is with the client. They are the ultimate arbiter of their own position. If they do marry that person, they are the ones dealing with that situation, not me. Right.
Right.
So I don't, that, you know, I very much talk about your choices, you know, and the way that things seem to be looking. But you know, here here's this, and you still have a choice around that, you know, not oh, this, you know, you're destined for you're destined for a terrible relationship. Well, then, okay, if I'm destined for a terrible relationship, you might as well stay here then. Thanks. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the devil I know. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So, it might be, it's like, this is looking like this now, but, we always retain the power of choice.
Yeah.
So that's the way that I present almost everything. Negative and positive, it's the power of choice,
Yeah.
you know, this is what it looks like. And then we add the missing ingredient, which is what you decide to do.
Right. Your choice. That's something that in a lot of the older astrological texts I've been checking out is that uh, a lot of them, it's in Abrahamic faiths is where a lot of this comes from. And so they're talking about, you can only read as far as God will let you.
Um,
And, uh, that these things that you can foresee or the answers that you get out of a horary question, all of it is still entirely dependent on the will of the one or of God or of the universe,
yeah,
of the higher level of intelligence. That you can get all the astrological readings that you want, but ultimately you know the stars aren't the ones calling the shots. They're just telling the story of what's going to happen.
mhm.
And ultimately, the author or the authors they can change things. I kind of trailed off and forgot where I was going with that. Yeah. All right. Well, on the subject of ethics in astrology, do you feel like we've done a good job on touching on everything you had thought of?
The only thing that I don't think that we did talk about was children.
Mm, yeah. So why won't you read a chart and tell an 8-year-old about their future?
Well, I mean, it goes back even farther than that. It's very common for parents who have just given birth to a child, even to say, "What do you see? What's going to happen?" And there is, I mean, I will talk to parents about their child's moon sign.
Okay.
Moon sign, it talks very much about their emotional development, and what kind of just kind of the quality of their childhood or their childness, or it's like the moon is um the first foray into development, into of emotions. Okay. So yeah, so I will say, okay, so your child has an Aries moon. So by golly, that you're trying to get them to sit down, it's going to be hard. Let them run around, you know. Or your child has a Pisces moon, and so they're going to be just pretty chill all the time, and but that's a helpful thing to parents. Okay.
Okay, right.
And I pretty much go no farther until, like mid-teen years. And then even then I'm still just talking about your sun sign, your Mercury, Venus, Moon, Mars. Pretty
Okay.
much stick in that territory. Um, the overarching reason for not reading of a child's full chart is because it becomes prescriptive.
Okay.
It's like, okay, so for example, I have this personal thing with Mars in Cancer. Okay. I'm like, from my experience, people with Mars and Cancer are terrifying. Okay. They lose it. And, so let's say you have a child and I say to you, oh, your child has Mars and Cancer. Oh my God, they're going to have the worst temper. They're just going to scream and run and, mayhem and,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's true sometimes of a Mars and
Right.
Cancer child, but it's not true all the time. But if I've already told you that your child is going to be an emotional tempest, that's what you're gonna help them live, right?
Right.
Because you expect it, and so by you expecting it, you project it onto that child. Okay, and so we have a child who really embodies way more than they might otherwise. Okay, or maybe I see a divorce. Okay, and I tell you, well, it looks like your your child's gonna deal with divorced parents. What? We're not divorced. When are we going to get divorced? Right?
Yeah.
It becomes, okay, well, obviously we're going to get divorced. That astrologer said, right? So it's all these kind of things where it's like, this is back to the power of astrology, and that people, are, they give you a lot of power to, say what is true and what is not true about their lives. And you can set a child up for, you can set them up for marvelous things, or you can set them up for chaos, but it's not, none of it is good.
Yeah.
Let the child embody their own chart and let them figure out whether they want a reading when it's time for them, when they're old enough to consent.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really interesting that you're gonna if you have any level of understanding about um astrology, and you're looking at your own kids' chart, um you're gonna be able to delineate some stuff yourself, but it's going to be a little bit more informed by what you want for your kid and what you're hoping for them. Um, but if somebody else comes in and tells you, and people tend to like, we kind of put on, not in a negative way, but we kind of put on our impressionable hat when we're going in for a reading, because we are asking somebody else about what the cosmos says about such and such a subject.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going in there and asking about your kid, just like you said, if you go and tell them that, oh, your kid's going to be a nightmare the first time that something difficult comes up with the kid, they're going to be like, oh my God, it's just like the astrologer woman
They
said.
were right. Yeah.
They're right. And then, you might not ever expect any better from your kid, because
Right.
like, I actually have a friend who has that placement that we were discussing, Mars and Cancer. And there are probably places in my life where you could look at me and say, oh, he definitely has Mars and Cancer. Because he's acting like that, because we can embody so many different things at different periods in our life.
Sure.
But there are probably also really, like I said, it's my friend. This is one of my like top 3 favorite people in the world. And I would not take their Mars out of Cancer, even if it has, represented some difficulties that they've dealt with in life. But it's also part of the essence of the beauty of this person, that just because emotions can be difficult doesn't mean that they're not worth having.
Right.
And
Right.
you can nurture and feed a crabby Mars, or you can, just say, that's awful. I don't want to deal with any of it, and be totally dismissive and rejecting of the, yeah, for however difficult it is for you, it's way more difficult for your kid,
Well,
and
and
you,
here's so, like, here's the thing with the Mars and Cancer bit. So I, in my own chart, have Sun and Mercury in Cancer, and the one of the nodes. But so my theory, and I have two specific people who embody for me the Mars and Cancer trope. Okay. But if I were to look at their Mars and the degree of their Mars, and whether they're probably right there on my Sun. Right?
yeah,
Which would very much personalize that experience of Mars in Cancer. But as an astrologer, then I get to take, if I'm not aware of what I'm doing, I get to take that Mars in Cancer trope that I've, my own personal argument with Mars in Cancer, and project it out onto other people.
right. Right.
So a reason for not just ethics, but also, working through your own stuff before you take on the job of reading people's charts.
Yeah.
Which is
Because
another
there might also be, just because you or I, as an astrologian, has come across people who have embodied the difficulty of X planet in Y sign. It doesn't mean that there aren't a million people out there who have that same placement but have never experienced any of those problems.
Right.
Because there's not, at a minimum of 9 other things going on in their chart. They have a different ascendant. Somebody with a Taurus ascendant and Mars in Cancer might embody that totally different than somebody with a Aquarius ascendant and Mars in Cancer, because it's providing different aspects. It's a totally different note that's being played, or chord that's being played, depending on what else is going on in the chart. So you can't just say, and we're picking on Mars and Cancers a lot. I'm sorry if anybody has that in their placement, but you can't just say that somebody without placement is going to be X, because you are not that placement. They are not that placement.
Right.
Are a reflection of the entire chart and everything that's going on inside of that, in addition to the charts of the people who raised them. And the charts of the people that they've been, the charts of the chart of the country that they live in. There's so much else going on that I could spend my entire life seeing people with Venus and Aquarius be one way, and never see the entirety of what a Venus and Aquarius can look like.
Right. Well, and I mean, this goes back to the whole sun sign debate, or, that we've talked about before. It's like, no, Mars, Venus, any planet, any placement. It's not destiny. It just is a data point. It's a part of what you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I deeply apologize, Mars and Cancer people. Thanks so much for being here with us today. To keep getting more astrology with Sunny and Boots, like and subscribe.
To talk with Sunny in an astrological consultation, visit sunnysastrology.com to schedule an appointment. To reach Sunny and Boots about the show, email us at contact@astrologyafpodcast.com. Links in the description.